Good evening, good day, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us right here on Excuse Me, Doctor. Welcome back. I am delighted to be here with you this week. My name is Dr. Melissa Clarke. Please call me Dr. Mel. You know, we're here every week doing what we do right here on Excuse Me, Doctor, making sure that you have the information that you need to make wise health decisions for yourself, for your family, even for your community. And of course, we're streaming on YouTube. Please hit subscribe if that's where you're checking us out. And if you're looking at us on Facebook, please hit that like button. And remember to please put your questions in the chat because that's why we're here. We're here to interact with you so you can get your questions answered and be a more empowered person when it comes to your health. So, before I go any further, I just want to mention that to all my Be Health Empowered listening family, that we are engaged here in a special with Howard University, and we're helping them find individuals for their COVID resilience research study. If you have any interest whatsoever, it reimburses or provides compensation voluntarily for any time that you put in filling out 2 surveys. It compensates for up to $100 for filling out those 2 surveys. If you're interested, please reach out to Dana Harvey at danaharveyresearch@gmail.com. That's DANA Harvey, HARVEY, research@gmail.com. So now that we have that out of the way, let's get into creating an amazing week for ourselves with all the health topics we're going to cover today. And you know what time it is. It is time for me to invite in to the studio my co-producers, Lila Mays and Wayne Bruce.
What's up? What's up? What's up, Dr. Mel? How are you?
Doing great. How are y'all doing?
Lila May.
Good.
What's happening?
What up?
What's happening up
All
top?
the things. All the things.
All the things.
All
Yep.
the things are happening, yes.
All those things popping out in LA there, huh?
Right. Hey, Lila,
Yeah.
I'm excited about today's show, man. I'm excited.
Yeah?
Yeah,
All right.
two of my favorite people. You know, I'm from DMV. I just happen to have 2 of my favorite people, and on the show today. That's
The
the deal.
multi-talented Russ
Awesome.
Parr, the Russ Parr Morning Show. I know a lot of people are tuned in to hear what he has to share with us tonight about his own health. And we are fortunate to have an incredible kidney doctor or a nephrologist whose name is Dr. Jagdeep Obhrai. He's going to be joining us a little bit later. We are going to talk about preventing kidney disease. And so
Yeah.
I know y'all want to tune in, and I know y'all are going to want to share it again with anybody who you know who might be interested in preventing kidney disease, whether they might have diabetes, they might have high blood pressure, they may have a family history of kidney disease, they may have kidney disease right now. So make sure you share it with all your friends, family, because it's really going to be an incredible show.
Share it.
So listen, I'm just going to address something that's happening. We are all aware there's some Mercury still in retrograde. Technical stuff is happening. There's some foreign light that's flashing in Dr. Bell's office that we are working through.
Still don't know what that is.
We still don't know what it is.
It looks like a spaceship landing.
It looks like Mercury has come into your office, Dr. Mel. You might need to get your husband to address that at some point.
I might.
Not tonight, though.
You're right.
Okay. All right, Dr. Mel, sorry.
Yeah, well, let's go to the recap because we have a lot to cover.
Okay.
Here we go. The recap. There we go.
All right. Well, you know, we always start off with the numbers, and we're at 83 million cases, y'all. Still climbing. COVID-19, yeah. But in the last month, we've doubled the number of new cases nationwide from 70,000 a day to 150,000 a day. We know it's a gross undercount because everybody's testing at home. But this is the thing, you know, people are afraid of that person. How many of y'all have been like in the checkout line at the supermarket and somebody coughed, everybody jumped back and looked at them, right? Well, that person probably is less of a risk to you than the person without symptoms sitting next to you at the restaurant or in the library or on the subway, on the bus. a new study shows that at least 60% of transmission comes from people who have absolutely no symptoms at all. So
Wow.
people making decisions about interacting with other people based upon whether they're coughing or sneezing, you know, obviously you want to keep your distance from those people, but masking indoors is still a very important way to prevent getting COVID-19, even though there are no mask mandates or very few mask mandates. Some places are bringing them back now.
We need to bring
This
them
is,
back.
yeah, that call I took right before we came on, a family member who is in a facility tested positive
Oh wow.
yesterday.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah. It is definitely surging here in Los Angeles.
And what I'm hearing, really sorry about your family member. I've had a number of friends who've called me over the past 10 days or so. People who've never, gone the whole pandemic and not had COVID are testing
Yep.
positive now.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, um, hospitalizations are going up too, about
Hmm.
22% since last week. Deaths are still holding steady at about the same amount per day, at roughly 300 a day. Still 300 too many, but obviously a vast improvement over what it was 3 or 4 months ago.
Right.
But
Hmm.
we don't know whether it's going to increase or not because hospitalizations are just increasing now. And so, there's always a lag of 2 to 4 weeks behind that increase in
Right.
hospitalization. So test frequently. You can go to covid.gov/tests. That third round of free tests is now available. So if you haven't ordered your first two, you can order all three at the same time. Or if you've got your first two batches of free ones already, you can go get your third right now. Um, get to treatment early. Talk with your doctor about options for treatment. And of
Hmm.
course, get vaccinated and boosted if you haven't already. It's a great way to cut down on hospitalization and death and even long COVID.
And getting
The
that
risk
additional
of long COVID.
booster. That
Yep.
helps, right, Dr. Mel?
Absolutely. For people over 50 and those people who are immunocompromised, getting your second booster is now what's being recommended by the CDC.
Okay.
Hmm.
Oh, and how could I forget? 5 to 11-year-olds are now eligible for boosters. That's hot
Yes.
off the presses just this
All
past
right.
week.
Because they
All
will
right.
carry around some COVID. Just saying.
I mean, just
Them
not funny,
jokers.
but
Look at
And
okay.
and for
them jokers.
protecting them as well.
They will carry.
Absolutely.
What you got, Lie?
They carry around germs. Listen, number two on the recap. So your girl, Dr. Mel, y'all, was on Red Table Talk. Did you see it?
Red Table Talk?
She was
You mean
doing
that Red
Red
Table Talk?
Table Talk. That
Yep.
one,
See,
that one
that
right
Red
there.
Table Talk? You mean with Jada, Gammy, and Willow?
That one,
They
yes.
called they called your girl. They reached out to Dr. Mel and wanted her to
What?
come on and talk about this crazy fentanyl situation. So, Dr. Bell, let's talk about what happened, what fentanyl is. It's it's everywhere. It's happening. Let's talk about it,
Yeah.
Dr. Bell.
Well, first of all, I want to take my hat off to them for deciding to highlight this epidemic
Hmm.
because fentanyl is, overdoses, drug overdoses are now
Right.
the leading killer of young people. And a lot of that is fueled by fentanyl. And, after I did this episode, a lot of the feedback I got from folks was, wow, I didn't even know what fentanyl was, right? So it's a narcotic. It's like in the same family of morphine, heroin, Percocet, oxycodone. You might have heard those names. It's a legitimate medication that is being used in hospitals, but the thing is, it can be manufactured cheaply and added to illegal drugs that are sold on the street. So people buy Percocet off the street, people buy oxycodone off the street. And when they do, they're taking a risk of the fact that it might be laced with fentanyl. Now, why is
Hmm.
fentanyl so, you know, concerning? Because it is 100 times more powerful than morphine, 50 times more powerful than fentanyl. All you need is a few, the size of something in the head of a pin to be contaminated in whatever drug you're taking, whether it's cocaine, heroin, these counterfeit pills. It's even been found in Adderall, which is a medication that young people take who have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or ADHD. And when they take those, if it's in there, it can be deadly because it's so powerful. So that's really why they decided to do the episode. If you have teens, I would recommend sitting down with your teen and watching it. It's that powerful because it's a great way to start a conversation with your teen just to make sure that they're not being unduly influenced, because you can just find it over social media. Go on the web,
Right.
order it on Instagram, and they'll deliver it to your house.
So
You know,
so
these counterfeit pills.
so Dr. Mel, I just want to say, uh, our excuse me, Dr. Family, Denise Stephanie just put in the comments that she just lost her 29-year-old to
Wow.
fentanyl 2 weeks ago,
Oh,
and she said it
wow.
was a combination of heroin and fentanyl, and
I'm
that's,
really
Sorry.
you
sorry to
know,
hear that.
we are, our thoughts and prayers are out to you. It is deadly. And run those numbers again, Dr. Mel, like how much more powerful than other.
Yeah, it's 50 times more powerful than heroin, 100 times more powerful than morphine. So if somebody's doing heroin, especially if they've done it before, they kinda know how much they're used to. But if fentanyl is in it,
Hmm.
they might take their usual amount and end up dying because they didn't know that it was
Hmm.
cut with something else. I got a lot of comments, well, people just shouldn't do drugs. Well, yeah, that's true too, but, it's happening, and it's actually happening to, young people who are being, solicited and peer pressure and etc. And so the best thing to do is to educate people so that they have the knowledge about the risk that they're taking and ways to lessen that risk.
All right.
And there, if I'm not mistaken, there's a way to test to see if it's in a thing, right?
Yeah, I don't want to give away the whole episode, but there are these things called fentanyl strips. We also talk
Okay.
about Narcan, which is, what can be that medication that can be used on the scene if somebody overdoses. And so, yeah, check out the episode. It's really, really rich, a lot going on there.
Right. Check out your girl on the episode, Dr. Mel.
Okay.
All right.
Next up is this story about formula shortage, which is not funny or it's really really serious. I actually read somewhere where people were trying to order formula from like Canada. So let's talk about it, Dr. Mill.
Yeah, well, one of the things I really want to address, and I want to call out friend of the show, Dr. Yolandra Haywood. I'm sorry, Dr. Yolandra, um, Dr. Yola. Sorry, um, because she had a great. If you're on Facebook and you follow her, she had a great piece about this. So I'd recommend also going to look
Dr.
at that.
Hancock.
Dr. Yolandra Hancock. Wow, that was a huge senior moment there. Um, uh, and also Yvonne Smith, who put a question in the chat before we even came on air about what's going on with the formula shortage. One thing I just really want to address is, I've seen this meme all over the social media about, can't we just go back to evaporated milk and Karo syrup, and there's like a little recipe that goes along with that, or watered down formulas to extend them. Um, the thing with homemade formulas is if you try to make formula yourself, it could get contaminated. Um, and so that's one reason why that's discouraged. And then also that recipe for the evaporated milk and the Karo syrup, yes, your great grandmother, your grandmother may have done that, but also that was back at the time when infant mortality was twice the rate of what it was today. It doesn't have enough nutrients to really properly um, uh, provide the nourishment that a growing child and their brain and their organs need uh, to grow properly. And so you don't want to necessarily go with those recipes off the internet. What you want to do is you want to talk to your pediatrician about what the alternatives are. If your child is on a special formula, your pediatrician can work with the formula manufacturers to get that. The formula manufacturers have hotlines that you can call. You can search those on the internet to find out what replacement formulas are available. There are also charities like Feeding America, United Way, social media mom groups that can help you find formula locally. Shop at places, smaller retail outlets that may still have them in stock as opposed to the places that most people go to. Then there's also this thing called human milk banking, and they collect donations, which are up now because of the formula shortage. And so if you're not able to breastfeed or choose not to breastfeed, you can also go to these human milk banks. Google the Human Milk Bank Association of America to find a resource near you that's been screened. They pasteurize the milk, so it's safe. So that's yet also another option. And then we've heard that the formula has arrived from Europe, 35 tons of it. It's going to take a little bit to distribute. Also, the Abbott factory that got closed down that sort of helped precipitate this shortage is going to be opening back up. It's going to take them a couple months to get up and running. But the bottom line is there's some relief coming. But in the meantime, there are also some other options to take.
Great.
And I think one of the questions I mentioned watered down formula. One of the reasons to not water down formula for infants is their kidneys, speaking of kidneys, are not mature enough to filter the water out. And so it can lead to water retention in babies, which can be very dangerous. And so you definitely don't want to add extra water to the formulas.
Wow. So, wow, that's good to know. And that's very good to know. Great information, Dr. Mel, as usual. I want to get to long COVID because we have some family members suffering long COVID symptoms, and they're young people. They're in the early 30s, and Valerie Spalding Parker just typed in the chat. At what point are symptoms considered to be due to long COVID? And it could be some relief for long COVID sufferers with antihistamines, right, Dr. Mill?
Yeah. Yeah, so beyond 3 weeks is the answer. And I'm just reporting on this study. I'm not endorsing antihistamines because this is one study. And so we never draw conclusions off of one study. This is something to talk with your doctor about as a possible alternative. This one study, it was only of 49 patients with long COVID. 26 of them were given antihistamines, either over the counter or the prescription available ones. And antihistamines, for those who don't know, are medications like Benadryl or Vistaril. And of those 26 who got them, 19 of them had partial or complete resolution of their symptoms, whereas of the other 23 people who didn't get the antihistamines, only 6 of them had resolution of their symptoms. The researchers aren't sure why it works. There's some theories around how our immune system actually, histamine is one of the components of one of the chemicals that are released by certain cells in our immune system. And so it's antihistamine. So maybe there's some mechanism whereby histamine makes long COVID symptoms worse. But either way, research is still going on in this. Talk to your doctor if you're having long COVID symptoms to see if this is a possibility for you.
All right.
So, yeah, so that's it for the, and I think I answered the question about the long COVID symptoms.
You did.
Yeah.
You answered the question about long COVID. You know, we have recently we've had some people, two Congress people, one lieutenant governor and then a congressman, who had strokes, and then we had some family who've had strokes, and some friends of ours in the past over the pandemic. Great friend of mine, comedian Sinbad, had a stroke. So, you want to speak to that, cutting the risk strokes?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that I read this really inspirational story of a Maryland man who lost two of his brothers to stroke, and that inspired him to really do a 180 with his lifestyle. He lost 170 pounds in order to cut his own risk from stroke. And I thought some of the tips that he shared were really good. I wanted to share them with everyone. One is that you can't change your family history, it is what it is. But you do have the power to change your habits that put you at risk for stroke and other things. We're going to hear about kidney disease later. He also mentioned setting small goals and celebrating successes when it comes to the changes you're making. So whether it's with your nutrition, like I'm going to just do one meatless day a week, right? And then celebrate that when you achieve it. Or I'm going to walk 15 minutes today, and then celebrate that when you achieve it, and set as your goal to do 15 minutes tomorrow and 15 minutes the next day and the next day, and then maybe increase it. So celebrate small victories, and then take advantage of emotional health counseling. That's one of the things that holds us back from making change in our lives. A lot of times it's covered under your insurance plans, even Medicaid covers mental health care. Take advantage of that. And then finally, surround yourself with like minded people, people who are on your same journey. And if they're not in your life immediately, there are tons of online communities that you can join for people to give you encouragement who are on the same road that you are, and you can help each other out. So I thought those were all really great tips for making lifestyle style changes when it comes to cutting your risk of stroke or any other chronic disease.
Indeed.
All right. So, what time is it, y'all?
Time for
Weekly debunk. Stopping misinformation in its tracks.
So, Mother Church Mother Teresa Twitter finger said, "I'm not getting vaccinated because it's anti my religious beliefs. My faith in God keeps me safe against getting COVID. Amen."
And she also
Okay.
said, I believe God, not COVID. Amen again.
Okay.
And what we said was, I don't know about that. Excuse me, Dr. Mel, is that true?
Well, I can't verify somebody's beliefs. People believe what they believe. I'm a spiritual person. I firmly believe in God. Um, I really think there are people out there who have ascended so far in their spiritual practice, no matter what their religion is, that they really may be able to walk through life unscathed. But that's not the vast majority of us. Many of us, of the same people who may say things like that, that's their reason for refusing vaccination due to religion. They may still be the ones who are the first ones to take Tylenol for a headache, or they may have a gun in their home to defend themselves, or they may lock their doors at night. And regarding locks, I was told by one person, well, it's not God I don't trust, it's these people out here. um, and I'm definitely not criticizing people who take these self-protection measures. I'm just saying that you can't necessarily justify a decision or use God when it's convenient because it's something you don't want to do. You have to be consistent across the board, especially when your choices affect other people. So it's like saying my faith allows me to drive drunk, God is going to protect me. Um, well, even if you survive, if you hit somebody, they're not going to. Being unvaccinated has been a major contributor to hospitalizations and deaths. We have doctors and nurses who are burnt out and overwhelmed taking care of, largely unvaccinated people. So ones that were preventable, right? Hospitalizations that were preventable, deaths that were preventable. Um, and we also know many religions say, love thy neighbor as thyself. So getting vaccinated as a way to protect your neighbor, protect the healthcare personnel that are trying to take care of everybody. I think that's just my opinion that that's a way of loving your neighbor. So take precautions in life. If you take precautions in life because it's people you don't trust, that's no different than getting vaccinated because you don't know what the people around you have been doing in terms of their part to cut down on the spread of COVID. So vaccination cuts the risk of getting seriously ill from COVID, the risk of long COVID, like we mentioned, and the spread of COVID. So any way you slice it, getting vaccinated does not have to be considered anti-religion. So I'll leave it at that.
And there
So
you have it.
there you have it. So thanks, Wayne and Lila. We have an incredible show lined up. I know I'm going to see you all back in a little bit, but I'm going to move on into our topic for tonight, which is kidney disease. It's silent and it can be deadly, but we rarely talk about it. We as Black people are almost 4 times as likely as whites to develop kidney failure. Black people are about 13% of the population, but are 35% of the individuals who get kidney failure in the United States. And that we know in Black communities, we might not have a grocery store nearby with fresh produce, but we're probably going to have at least one dialysis center. So, and it's not just Blacks, it's also Hispanics and Native Americans who are 1.3 and 1.2 times more likely to be diagnosed with kidney failure. So, today we're going to talk about how you and your loved ones can guard against kidney disease, and also, too, how systemic racism has played a role in fueling this kidney disease epidemic in the Black community. I want to welcome our incredible guest tonight. Our first is Mr. Russ Parr. He is a multi-talented entertainment mogul. I'm sure many of you know him through the Russ Parr Morning Show, where I also appear as a weekly medical contributor. But he's also a movie director, a writer, an actor, a television personality. And he is going to share with us tonight his recent health journey. Welcome, Russ. Thanks so much for joining. All right. I can't hear you. Are you still there? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Now I can. Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Thanks
my
for
bad.
joining.
Okay, thank you.
And our next guest is Dr. Jagdeep Obhrai. He is an accomplished and experienced nephrologist, also kidney doctor is the same thing. He practices in the Washington, D.C. area. And on a personal note, he has been my father-in-law's doctor for over 10 years. And he has on more than one occasion, not only been his doctor, but been his advocate, his supporter, and been the instrument that God, we just finished talking about God, the instrument that God used to keep him alive on more than one occasion. So welcome, Jagdeep. Welcome, Dr. Obhrai. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm going to start off with you, Russ. You know, you and I
Okay.
talk regularly. You
Yep.
recently shared with me that you had a diagnosis related to your kidneys that came somewhat as a shock.
Yeah.
Share that with us.
Well, I think the big thing is that I was taking high blood pressure medication for like what 25 years, 30 years,
Mhm.
and I assumed that it was working, and I never really adjusted it. My former doctor was getting to the retirement age, and what eventually he told me, well, now surveys say, hey, you can walk around with at 150 over 90. And when I went to a new doctor, they said, oh, no, you can't. Because of my age, you thought, well, hey, they changed the parameters, and maybe they have. I don't know, but all I know was walking around at that blood pressure was an issue. And you combine that with, you know, borderline diabetes, and then slipping over into that category, that's a recipe for kidney disease.
Right.
So
Exactly.
my numbers say stage 3 kidney disease, and that obviously freaked me out because I'm thinking, oh, this is it.
Right. Right.
But it's not a death sentence, especially when you do something about it.
Well, before we get
So
into the something about it, you mentioned
mhm,
150 over 90. I just wanted to share with the audience that sort of quote unquote normal blood pressure, average blood pressure is 120 over 80. So 150 over 90 is actually significantly high.
yeah,
And I want to and you mentioned that your doctor basically said high blood pressure and borderline diabetes/diabetes are what tax your kidneys. I want to go to Dr. Obhrai for a moment just to level set. Can you explain to us what do the kidneys do? Why are they in your body? And
Uh,
what's the difference between kidney disease and kidney failure?
Okay. So the way I describe the kidneys is basically they're the most technically advanced filter in the world. So your kidneys are responsible for getting rid of salt and water and toxins, but keeping all the good stuff in your blood. And so that's a real challenge. And they filter 25% of all of your blood flow with each heartbeat.
Wow.
And so they're seeing all that blood pressure. They're seeing if you have diabetes, all that high blood sugar all the time. And over time, that can damage them. And chronic kidney disease, basically just breaking down the words, chronic meaning long-standing, kidneys obviously affecting your kidneys, and something, the disease, something is injuring them. Now, what is injuring them can be lots of different things. Most commonly in the United States, as you guys have been discussing, it's high blood pressure and diabetes. But any number of other things can also injure them. Kidney failure is the progression of kidney disease to the point where your kidneys don't work anymore at all. They've stopped doing that process of filtering out all of the toxins and all of the salt and water that you need to get rid of, and you're just stuck with it.
And thank you. That was an excellent explanation. Russ also mentioned that he was diagnosed with stage 3 kidney disease. What's that spectrum?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah. The staging system for kidney disease has been around for about the last 10 years. And it's really useful insofar as it breaks down for people. There are different levels of kidney function. But most commonly, when people hear of staging in healthcare, we're talking about staging of cancer. And I just want to make sure that we're, as you said, to set the level here, the staging of cancer and the staging of kidney disease is very, very different.
Very different, yeah.
Right. And a lot of your viewers may already know this, but just to be very clear with everybody, when you have a cancer staging, you're that stage and you're that stage forever, okay? If you have stage 3 cancer or stage 4 cancer, you're that stage. With chronic kidney disease, your stage can vary with time. Like we were talking earlier in the green room, where we see people that have kidney failure or kidney injury that can recover. That is possible. So stage 3 kidney disease can actually improve and become stage 1 kidney disease or no kidney disease at all. It can happen. I mean,
so
it happened with...
one is the least. 1 is the least and 5 is the
That's
worst.
Right. That's right. I should have been clear. Yeah, you either have no kidney disease, which is 0, and we're not even talking about it, stage 1, stage 2, and then stage 5, stage 6 is kidney disease, where we're talking about dialysis or on dialysis.
Yep. Okay. And so, you know, why does high blood pressure and diabetes lead to kidney disease?
So it's an interesting question. So the mechanisms for high blood pressure and diabetes causing kidney disease are basically damaging the blood vessels that feed the kidneys. Those blood vessels that feed the kidneys are very sensitive to the pressure that they receive, similar to the blood vessels in the heart and similar to blood vessels in the brain that cause stroke and heart attack. And so we want to protect those blood vessels from that high blood pressure. Similarly, the effects of diabetes on the kidney also affect the blood vessels that feed the kidney. And those blood vessels that feed the kidney are also similarly damaged, just like the blood vessels that feed the brain, that feed the blood vessels that affect that feed our limbs, our legs, our arms, and the heart also.
So Russ, I wanted to get back to you. You were about to say that we heard from Dr. Obhrai that kidney disease can improve, right? So what are some of the things that you've been working with your doctor on in terms of advice that he's given you that you've been able to carry out?
Well, when he first hit me with that, and Dr. Obhrai, thank you for talking about the staging, because we always equate staging to cancer. And so I'm thinking, wow, I'm a step away. But what my doctor, he was very confident. He said, hey, listen, I see this all the time. Uh, changed my medications that I was on for decades. Um, he said, oh, and you have to lose 35 pounds. And I'm like, uh-oh. And and so I was placed on some medications, metformin, some other things to protect my kidneys. And I started losing weight, exercising. Well, I was exercising, but uh, it wasn't enough. So, I mean, I'm down, like, since the diagnosis, I'm down about 22 pounds. And I
Wow.
got probably about 10 more to go. He
Great.
wasn't anticipating that I would.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
He wasn't anticipating, because he gave me some heavy doses of stuff, and my body wasn't adjusting to it. I was just walking around in a fog and dizzy all the time, because the more weight you lose, the less your blood pressure goes down. I'm not a doctor, but I realized that it was probably a little bit too much. I think the big thing for me was learning. I learned so much
Yeah.
about uh, the kidneys, and I didn't realize that your kidneys can operate at such a, you say, oh, you lost 50% of your function. I'm like, oh, and
Mhm.
he said, oh, no, no, yeah, your kidneys can operate on that with no problem. You can live a long life with that. Because I've been dealing with my father, who's like 93, who has kidney failure.
Yeah.
And I've watched his GFR numbers. GFR is the number they use to measure your function in your kidneys, the filtering process. I watched his numbers dip, and I watched them come back just by, following doctor's orders. And so I knew that was happening with him. So it motivated me more to do what I'm doing, and to eat properly, and to control my blood pressure and my glucose, because those are keys. We
Right.
got people walking around, um, walking around every day, because you don't feel it.
Right.
You don't
Right.
There's
think there's
silent,
anything wrong.
silent, silent
Mm.
symptoms. Yeah.
Yeah. And
And
I
I,
didn't think there was anything wrong with me.
mhm.
And in that blood work, because 6 months before that, my blood work was fine. All of a
Right.
sudden, it dropped off
Yeah.
a cliff.
And
And
what
it can
I'm
happen like that.
hearing, yeah, what I'm hearing you say is that close relationship with a doctor, monitoring your situation, when you mentioned the medication seemed a little bit too strong to you, instead of giving up, you went back to the doctor and said, hey, something isn't right. So the whole thing is developing that partnership with
Yeah.
your physician, and really trying to maintain that close contact, getting checkups on a regular basis, because like you said, these things are so silent.
Yeah.
You don't know you have them, and you really have to get blood work or get your blood pressure checked on a regular basis to
Can,
know what's going on.
can I add one other thing?
Mhm,
I was walking around at like 280 pounds about a year
Right.
year or so ago.
mhm,
And people look at me, because I'm 6'3", and they're thinking, oh
yeah,
man, you wear your weight well. I
mhm,
might wear my weight well on the outside, but not on the
right,
inside. I,
Right.
right.
I
Excellent
figured
point.
that out. I learned my lesson. And
Yeah,
so I'm I wasn't happy when I was told this was going on with me, but it was probably the best thing to happen to me,
mhm,
because it made me conscientious about looking around in my family, and other. My older brother was just diagnosed with stage 3. So
Right.
I
mhm.
don't know if it's hereditary, and that's a question I do have for Dr. Obhrai. Is this a hereditary thing, or is this just, uh, or this is just something that happens with people that not watching their blood pressure and not eating properly?
Like with many things, the answer is both. So there are active research programs looking into why certain communities have higher incidences of kidney disease. One of the leading groups in the United States is at Duke, and they have made really important discoveries. There are single genes that have been identified that are more predominant, mutations in these genes are more predominant in Black people, and they are making exciting progress on those fronts. That's definitely happening.
And the
But
other
it,
thing that Dr. Clarke and I talked about, I'm not trying to take over your show, Dr. Clarke, but
I know
I got
you can't help
nephrologists
it.
right
You
here.
interview people all day, every day, right?
We were talking about the measurement, the standard, because there used
Yeah.
to be two measurements. There was an African American measurement, and then there was a non-African American measurement.
Right. And I
When
think I alluded to that.
on my
Yeah.
recent
At the
blood
beginning of the
test,
show.
they didn't
Yep.
have two anymore. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, oh man, my GFR went down.
I know.
But it really didn't.
Didn't change.
It was that other number, that non-African American number that they're going by now.
Yeah.
And Dr. Mel and I discussed that it was kind of discriminatory because you got people that are Black thinking, oh, hey, my kidneys are fine because look at my number.
Right.
It's like 6 or 7 points higher than the non-African American number.
Yeah.
I know
So
this
Russ,
sounds a little confusing to people, but I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr.
yeah, you bring up
Yeah.
a really good point. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Obhrai to really explain this change because it's kind of nuanced, but it's really an important breakthrough in the way that doctors think about kidney function. Because previously, there was a Black kidney function and everybody else kidney function. So, Dr. Obhrai, can you break that down for us?
It's even more confusing, and I'll explain why. So it was specifically called African American and non-African American. And as I don't know if I'm saying something that's controversial, but we know that race is a social construct. It's not a biologic construct. And so, so saying something is African American, what about people who are, from Africa? Does it apply to them? They're not necessarily American. It's very confusing, right? So I want to come back and talk about how we get this number GFR that Mr. Parr identified as being the crucial number. GFR stands for the filtration rate of the kidneys, okay? And that filtration rate, fortunately, breaks down on about a 100-point scale. So 100 being close to normal or perfect, and 0 being nothing, okay? So what happened is that we took one blood test. The blood test is called creatinine. And by doing some math, we converted it to this essentially 100-point scale. And we did math that had slightly different number variables and got to the African American number and the non-African American number. And so that's been eliminated. And the reason it's been eliminated, you've already discussed. It's because access to certain programs, especially access to kidney transplantation, was different for people that had Black skin tones and people that had non-Black skin tones, basically. So if you have a GFR, a percent kidney function of 20 or more, you are not eligible for kidney transplantation. If you have a GFR that's less than 20, you do. But as you may imagine, if you have an equation that gives you slightly higher GFRs, 5 to 6 points higher, then that's going to limit access to kidney transplantation for people that we define as African American.
Wow.
So it's just,
that says it all right there.
It's just as simple as that. And
So
then
that
as
was
you
what was
also
happening. Black people were getting kidney transplants
a
less
little bit
than
less,
than everybody else. Right.
That's
Even
right.
though the
And they
need
were,
was greater.
that's exactly right. And even going back to when we're talking about, as Mr. Parr was discussing, if you have kidney issues, the difference between getting access to certain medications and being enrolled in certain research studies even was limited if you had stage 3 kidney disease or stage 2 or whatever. We weren't including people based on just this single number. And so because we know that race is a social construct, not a biologic construct, having this distinction really came into question, and it's been eliminated now.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that that is one huge progress that I want to say. And it was actually, from my understanding, was brought about by Black medical students who were like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any
Don't make
sense.
sense. Exactly.
And because of their agitating, changed it, which is why we have to have people on the inside who also help to bring about change, because that's been huge. Unfortunately, we have been talking and we have to bring our audience in because I know they have some questions. So Wayne and Lila, please jump on back in and bring to us what's going on in the chat so that we can put it to Dr. Obhrai and to Russ.
Oh,
It's so it is more in the chat. It's more just statements, and it's a whole lot of people like Valerie Spalding Parker who says, "Great job, Russ. That is great news to hear about losing weight." And it's about a lot of people being pissed off about medical racism, if I could say that.
Well,
okay. Well, I have a question.
yeah,
I do have a question,
What's that?
okay.
and it's just about that. It's for Russ. How did you lose the weight?
Um, intermittent fasting really helped a lot, and it may not be for everybody, but after a while, I mean, you just get used to it. I'd go 16 hours without eating, and then 8 hours eating, fairly normal. Not doing my cakes and ice creams. I didn't realize how many sweets I was devouring in a day. Because in my mind, I could have pancakes in the morning and a cupcake in the afternoon, and I'm thinking, well, the pancakes aren't really sweets, but it's a cake. And
And ice cream at
so,
night. Right?
yeah, and I suffered from GERD also, which is a digestive issue. After I started doing the intermittent fasting, I the GERD went away. I don't even have to take pills for it, which was interesting. I don't eat after 5 o'clock at night. And
Okay.
that might be tough for everybody. It was tough for like 2 to 3 days. After you did that, after I got through those 3 days, boom. And if you walk 30 minutes about 3 or 4 times a week, just walk, or 45 minutes. That walking is incredible. And so I attribute a lot of it to that.
Oh, that's
Can I
that's great.
comment on that?
Yeah, yeah, please.
I started doing intermittent fasting too. Not to jump on your train, but I do the same thing. And there's actually some data that supports it. And it's, as you said, different people pick different time periods, but as long as you're putting some restriction on yourself, I think it helps me. And in particular for me, I know that my big downfall is eating late at night.
Yes.
And so that actually targeted the particular area that I had an issue. And I had prediabetes like 5 or 6, probably 8 years ago. And I started doing it then because I had a choice. Do I want to start taking medications, or do I want to see if I can do this with my lifestyle?
Yeah.
And the other thing is that once you cross that threshold, after you have a couple of A1Cs where they measure your glucose in your once you have two of them that it's gone beyond the scale, now you're in type 2 and you're stuck with that. And I crossed that threshold. But my numbers after doing this, my numbers have gotten better. My labs have gotten better. I was a little concerned about the labs on my GFR, which measures your kidney function. But I realized that I thought I had gone down, but no, they got rid of the African American number and using this other number. And so it looked like I went up. So we're moving in the right direction. But
Right.
that's what it really helps.
And I want to say too that, intermittent fasting is one way to do it. There's Mediterranean diet. That's another way to do it. Moving every day, really key. But those sort of lifestyle changes, including getting enough sleep, um, are all the basis for correcting inflammation in our body, which is the root cause of many of these high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes, kidney disease. So many things sort of start with inflammation, and these things that you're mentioning are all anti-inflammatory ways to kind of cool your body down and let it get back into balance and do what it does, which is naturally heal. And some of these things are reversible, like you
Okay.
said. So
We have a
Well,
question.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We have a question from Yvonne Smith, and I guess it's to Dr. Obhrai. What is a healthy kidney diet?
It's a great question. So it depends on where you are on the spectrum of kidney disease. So if you're at Mr. Parr's stage, what you guys have been talking about, basically doing what your mom said, eat more veggies, cut down the salt, try to eat, if you're going to eat meat, uh, fish is probably better than chicken, is probably better than red meat. And then decreasing portions is really important. Now, as Mr. Parr and I, we share that we both do intermittent fasting, but as Dr. Mel said, there are a multitude of ways to get to lower caloric intake. But just getting that down is important. Now, as your kidney disease progresses, it becomes harder. We have to start restricting more things. We start restricting foods that have certain chemicals that the kidney is essential for getting rid of, like potassium. We have to try to minimize, as Dr. Mel said, acid, which is important in inflammation. We have to try to minimize other chemicals like phosphorus.
Can I just add one other thing? Is that stage 3, from what I understand, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, doctor, stage 3 kidney disease usually doesn't progress to stage 4 unless you do nothing about your
about
health.
it.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
you can battle this.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a really important point. What you've done is you've addressed the root causes that got you to where you are. And if you do that, then you have a really a much better outlook. Can I share Wayne, can I share your dad's story a little bit?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. So like you guys said, I've known him for about 10 years. And I think in 2014 or 2015, I told him he was going to be on dialysis in like 6 months
You
because
did.
his kidney disease was advanced and progressing. And over time, he lost, I think, like 60 or 70 pounds.
Yeah.
And he improved his diet, he improved his activity, and he proved me wrong. He did eventually start dialysis, but it was 7 years later. And I told him it would be 6 months, but he started dialysis in 2021. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, I have so much admiration for him and everything he did to help himself. And it was a journey that I think that, his family really was crucial in assisting him. And you guys know what I'm talking about. And so I think he did a great job. And, and he addressed the root causes of what got him there.
Right. And I will say, add that really one of the only reasons I think that he got on dialysis because he had other
Yeah,
illnesses that injured his kidneys that
that's true.
were not preventable, right? And
Right,
I asked for his permission to talk about him because I knew you were going to be on
right,
the show. He was like, "Yeah, yeah, go ahead."
right.
So yeah, and he is an incredible person in terms of his willpower. So yes, yes, and you have been incredible in terms of helping him. So we're very grateful for
Yeah.
that.
I tell people all the time about the wonders of Dr. Obhrai and how he saved
No,
through tough love and going at him and really talking to him. I think no, Dr. Obhrai was more gentle than I was. But
Right.
and just you you were very instrumental with my dad, and he is
Yeah.
86 right now. He's in another battle, but you know that dude's a fighter.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Nice.
So I want to try to get in one more question before we have any in the chat, Lila.
Yes,
Anything you're seeing?
you
Okay.
see,
Wayne has one, I guess.
All right.
Leslie Dawson. Can you speak about kidney stones, the causes, and that does lead and does it lead to severe kidney disease? I'm sorry.
Dr. Obhrai?
Yeah. So kidney stones are interesting. If you have kidney stones have a variety of causes, and there are some dietary causes. There are some dietary, some lifestyle changes that we can definitely institute that can limit the formation of kidney stones and their worsening. And if you have recurrent severe kidney stones, they can actually cause chronic kidney disease. Fortunately, it is uncommon. Nowadays, we can usually prevent things from getting to that point. It, it, they're incredibly painful. My dad, who literally cut off his finger, says the worst thing that ever happened to him was his kidney stone. And so it but interestingly, we allow people to have one. We don't really, we say if you have one, we're not going to do anything about it. It's when we have the second one, do we really jump in and start trying to make significant lifestyle changes. I would contend that if you have one, it's so bad that you want to change your lifestyle so that you do not want to ever have another one. But yeah, if you're having lots of kidney stones, definitely seek out care. There's definitely stuff that we can do to make your life better.
Great.
Can I make one
Wow.
last comment, if you don't
Yeah.
mind?
Yeah, one last.
There are so many people that are walking around right now with high blood pressure, and you
Yeah.
don't know it because we have this distrust for doctors. There are so many doctors of color that you can go to, like Dr. Mel and others, if that's your issue. And I hope that would not be the case. But I wanted to do the show because I know so many people that have high blood pressure. I didn't realize the damage it was really doing on the inside. So it is
Yeah.
important and imperative that if you're diabetic or you have diabetes or you're obese or whatever, you have to address that.
I think that's excellent point to end on. Um, that's why we're here. We're here to empower people to know that there are things that you can do to take ownership of your health and really help set the course, that you don't have to just sit back and let things happen to you. And so thank you for ending on that note, Russ. Thank you, Dr. Obhrai, for being here. Thank you, Russ, for being here. You
Thank
guys
you.
are wonderful, wonderful information. As always, thank you, Lila and Wayne, for walking us through the whole show and for all the great questions from the audience. I want to just remind everybody about the study that I mentioned up at the top of the hour, Howard University research, COVID resilience study, compensation available, just 2 surveys to fill out. You can receive up to $100. Reach out to Dana Harvey at danaharveyresearch@gmail.com if you're interested at all. I want to again thank everybody for tuning in. We will be back very soon, Mondays, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Thank you so much for joining us here at Excuse Me Doctor, and we're out. Everybody be wise, be well, and be health empowered.
So I guess I should thank the Robinsons. They invited me. They still don't know. I hooked up with Dave 3 days ago. He'll start coughing tomorrow. And I bet in 10 days he'll be on a ventilator. Now his wife, she's not vaccinated because she thinks it'll prevent her from being pregnant. But what they don't know is that I can decrease sperm count. Sorry, Dave. Good luck with that.